Welcome back. In this video we're going to talk about flow control in Commodore BASIC. Now, flow control is something that is inherent in every good or bad programming language, and it usually means that the flow of the program is not so much interrupted, but it's redirected into a different direction, to a different part of the program. And procedural programming languages such as BASIC always have that, and it's very important to redirect the program flow. It's usually based on a condition. If a condition is met, then the program is taking a different route. If that condition is not met, then the program continues on as if nothing had happened. And the Commodore 64 in the BASIC V2, both on the C64 and on the VIC-20, they had this if-then condition available. And in fact, let's have a look at this. This is my real-life Commodore 128. Let us just go into C64 mode and ta-da! Perfect. And let me show you what I mean by that. So let me see, in line 10, we're going to input a number, say X. In line 20, we're going to say if X is smaller or equal than 5, then, well, actually I shouldn't put the space there. It doesn't matter, it's just a semantic, thing. I'm a belt and braces type of guy, one of those things. So if X is smaller or equal than 5, then we could go print something and say X is smaller than 5. And anything after the then is being executed if this condition is met. So in my case, I'm also going to end the program here, because in line 30, I'm going to say just print X is larger than 5, for example. In fact, let me just take the equal sign out of here, just to one of those things. It doesn't really matter. But in reality, what happens if we run this and we type in a 3, then we get to see X is smaller than 5, which is correct. And if we run this program again and we type in a 7, then we see X is larger than 5. So that's a way of how to redirect the program flow with the if and then command. There's a related command to if and then, and that's the on GOTO command. We're going to perhaps discuss that at the end if I remember it. Because while we're on the if and then command, there is something on the +4 and on the Commodore 128 where in which case they have expanded this command greatly. And because I'm not entirely sure why that was put onto the agenda, because really with a little bit of logical thinking, you can redirect the program flow with this code literally anywhere you want. And but languages like C have an else clause. So if a condition is met, then do this. Else, as in alternatively, do something else. So if X is smaller than 5, then print something else. Else, print another thing. And the issue with that is really that it kind of encourages people to write spaghetti code, but it's much more useful in object-oriented or structured programming languages, and not so much in procedural languages where that is kind of implied. If the condition is not met, well, just carry on executing the program. But I guess with the introduction of some other BASIC commands, they wanted to make BASIC more of a structured programming language. So you were kind of meant to execute a subroutine in this case. So I guess rather than just execute your code on this line after the then, just go to a subroutine and let the subroutine deal with it, or go to somewhere else and not return here. That's also an alternative. But hey, they have introduced the else statement, and I'm going to show you that next, because that is kind of an interesting one. I'm going to go into Commodore 128 mode for that though, because that and on the +4 and BASIC 3.5 and a BASIC 7, this is where that works. So let's start our code again in line 10 with input X, and in line 20 we can analyze this. If X is smaller than 5, then print X is smaller than 5. And I can also, on the same line, specify an else. So I can say else print x is larger than 5. And that's just literally 2 lines of code. But what is of course obvious already is a basic line, a line of basic text can only be 80 characters, and I'm already at the end of this, so I shouldn't really be executing a lot of code here. But nevertheless, it is possible. So if I say 3, then it just says x is smaller than 5, and if I run this again and type in 7, then it says x is larger than 5. So this is exactly what we'd expect there to happen. But of course my code looks terrible, even though it's only 2 lines and this one line does a lot of stuff. It is still very cramped. And this is what you can do on the +4 as well as on the Commodore 128. But they've expanded this with 2 other keywords only on the Commodore 128, and I suppose on the C65 as well. That would have had that as well in BASIC 10, but hey, we'll never know. And that is the keywords are begin and BEnd. And the way you use them is that you can, it's basically like the curly braces in C or in other programming languages, where you group a block of code together. So let me show you what I mean by that. I can, if I overtype line 20 and say if x is smaller than 5, then begin, which is an odd thing to say, but between begin and BEnd is basically a block of code. So in line 30 I can say something casually like x is smaller than 5, and then I can go for another line and say print which is nice. And I can do anything I want here until at some point I stop this with BEnd. And then if I wanted to imply an else as well, then I have to put that on the same line as the BEnd, so I can then go BEnd else, and I can say begin again. So begin twice. So if where the BEnd ends, that's the end of the first block, and then I'll say else, and I can either execute code here, or I can also put this into another block, which I will do. So on line 60 I'm going to say print x is larger than 5, and we can say something else such as larger is better than smaller, I guess, for example. And then I must make sure I end this also with the BEnd keyword. And now if we do that, if we run that program, we type in a 3, then notice what happens. X is smaller than 5, which is nice, which means that these 2 lines of code are being executed, and anything behind that is ignored. And this is kind of a nice idea to cram more code into a smaller space. So the if-then statement out of a sudden isn't confined to a single line of code anymore, which was even worse with the if-then-else. Now you can write as much spaghetti code as you like. So it's one of those things that kind of encourages people to write bad code, and it is probably a much better idea to break these 2 things out in their own respective subroutines and just say if x is smaller than 5, then GOSUB, I don't know, 200, and after that end the program. And then on the next line, either with else or without else, you just call another subroutine that would deal with the fact that x is now bigger than 5. Let's try this one more time with a larger number like 7, and the same thing as predicted happens. All these 3 lines of code are being executed, and the 2 lines of code that I've put in the top 2 begin and BEnd statements are completely ignored in this. So that is that. Now I did promise you I was going to show you the on-GOTO routine as well, and that is that's another on-GOTO or on-GOSUB. So it's basically the on keyword. That's an important one as well. That also works on the Commodore 64, on the VIC-20, on the +4, as well as on the Commodore 128. So I'm just going to stick with this machine here, but do know that it does work on the Commodore 64 as well. Let's begin a new program, and in the first line, we're going to ask for a number again. And now I'm going to write, say, 3, they don't have to be subroutines. We're going to do this with GOTO commands, but with GOSUB it'll work just as fine. I'm going to say maybe in line 100, I'm going to say print x was 1, not once 1. Oh yes, and also maybe in line 110 I'm going to end the program. In line 200 I'm going to print x was 2. In line 210 I'm also going to end the program. In line 300 I'm going to print x was 3. And in line 310 I'm also going to end the program. There we go. So that's our listing so far. In line 20, so we're going to go jump back up there. We're going to use this on GOTO command. The on x go to 100, 200, and 300. And that is the entire magic of that. So it's a kind of a variation of the if-then command. And it'll basically say, if x is 1, then go to 100. If x is 2, go to 200. And if x is 3, go to 300. If x is larger than anything that I've specified, so I've only specified 3 values, say, but if I should choose x being 4, for example, it will, I believe, continue with the code. We're gonna have to let's put a special clause in here on in line 30, which technically we shouldn't really reach. Print x was out of range. How is that? And we're going to follow that with an end statement in line 40. So this is our whole listing. This is the full listing now. And let's see what happens. So I run it. If I type in 1, then I'm expecting the program to go to line 100. X was 1, and then we're finishing. So that's cool. Let's try this again. Ruin. Yeah, exactly. Let's Commodore 128 has ruined me. Let's try typing in 2, and x was 2 indeed. And if I type this in again, 3, x was 3. Let's see what happens if we type in something larger, like, I don't know, 567. Illegal quantity error, okay, well, I should have guessed right. Let's try something harmless like 4. No cheating. X was out of range, so that's exactly what should have happened. Say 0, x was out of range. That's perfect. I don't actually know how many items you can specify with on GOTO, but I suppose it's as many as you can cram into one line of basic text. It also works with GOSUB. So if you were to replace on x GOTO with on x GOSUB, then the same principle would apply. But of course, once you return from a subroutine, you will be put back to the line following the on, or basically if you have a colon here, then whatever comes after this command would then be executed with the subroutine. And once again, this works on all the Commodore machines, including, I believe, the PETs, as well as the Commodore 64, VIC-20, and the Plus 4, and of course the 128. That was it. I hope this was helpful in writing basic programs. Happy hacking, everybody. If you like this video, of course, then share it with friends, family, and total strangers, and with all the retro crowd you can find on the internet. If you like my videos, then please subscribe to my channel, and I hope I will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.